In the last video, part 1, Enough Money for Enough Time, we left off with seeing how interest and earnings multiply your savings and investments, making you able to have more than you put in after you've saved enough money for enough time, so you can have plenty of money to live on in your later life. I'm here to tell you a different side of the story of saving for your later life. The first thing I know is that Social Security and a pension, if you have one, will not replace the income you need for the standard of living you're accustomed to. So don't fall for the magic rainbow thinking that says you'll probably just be okay if you don't do anything. And the second thing is, if you're on the right track and have been saving for your later life, inflation will steal from your savings. My name is Plenty, from the family of Enoughs. Plenty Enough. We're going to go back in time a little bit as I share with you a super important lesson I had to learn the hard way about how the money I've worked hard to save can get stolen. And it happens to everybody. You see, I had been saving just like I heard you should. And I'd reached quite a big number in my accounts, a company plan, an IRA, and some other investments. And I was going along and trying to live the life I was used to, adding more to the accounts and starting to spend some of it. And after about a year, I had an unexpected visit from a distant cousin, one of the Enough family members, named Now Enough. I'd met him before, but I really didn't know him very well. He dropped in, and actually, I began noticing that some of all that money I had saved started going missing. Sure, I was earning interest on it, but I was seeing the total amount going down almost as fast as it went up. So I accused Now Enough, and he even confessed. He said, "Of course I grabbed that money, and I always will. It's what I do." I said, "What? You admit it and dare to boast about it?" Now Enough said, "Well, I didn't take it all. That's something I never do, at least not all at once. Best thing you can do is save more. I'm going to get some of that too, because you only need enough to live on." I wondered what kind of cousin this was, but I felt powerless, and I learned that what he was doing was normal and legal. And some people I talked to said, "What'd you expect? That's always what happens." And over a long time, the amount your cousin takes gets to be a lot of money. Yeah, he's right. The only thing you can do is save more. I knew I needed to just accept what was happening and do what I could to get back on track. So that's what happened. But I needed to learn how, like how much more money would I need to make up for what I was losing. I needed a tutor to help me learn the real way to figure it out. And that's what I'm ready to share with you now. Learning it was a ride, but I came out on the other side, and now I know what to do. By the way, I found out that cousin wasn't a family member at all. He wasn't even a friend. And Now Enough wasn't even his real name. He just goes around fooling people that when they get him, they have now enough money, that is, when really they don't. His real name is Later, and he's part of the Danger family, Later Danger. And now it makes perfect sense to me, because after I thought for so long that I would have enough money for myself and my family now, Later came and I saw how I hadn't planned for that danger of Now Enough stealing from the future. I know, it's gotta sound a little confusing and crazy. I tried to kick Later Danger out and forget about him, but he only hid out and he kept coming back, so I just gave up on that and figured out how to live with him. But I did learn how to get ahead of him too, so that's what I want to tell you about now, about inflation. Because did you notice Later Danger's middle initial, I? Well, I found out he actually goes by that, and his middle name is what we're calling him, inflation. He spends his time blowing up prices and cost of living. That's what happened to my money. Later Inflation Danger blew it up, so I needed more. Now, what I'm going to show you is real, but it's not real hard. Just hang in with me, and I'll do my best to break it down and make it clear. Let's just start with some basics before we get to any math, okay? In the last video, Enough Money for Enough Time, we showed how a sum of money grows over time because of interest earnings or return on investment. In this video, part 2, Your Interest, Your Money, we're going to show how you can calculate the effect of inflation. And it's really the same idea as interest, except it's a negative sign, not a positive sign. Yes, inflation subtracts from your money. You might even say steals instead of adding to it. But the math is really just the same. We would want to know what the negative impact of inflation will be over the time of our later years, so we know how much to adjust what we're saving and not be surprised by the loss of our buying power over that time. After all, we want to have enough money to live on. Now, there are some known negatives that significantly affect what you put away for any later years of life. The biggest elephants in the room are taxes and inflation. You might as well just take any basic savings target you think you'll need and increase it by a third to a half. But that's only if you want to keep close to the same standard of living you have now. But the point is, what you may think you have is less than what you may really have. You need something to help you save enough to make up for that loss. So how can you end up with a lot more than you put in? What you want is to be able to count on the amount you save growing on its own due to interest and earnings. And that's an idea you can actually calculate. It's really kind of a funny word, interest. We may know what it means, but how did it come to mean what it means? All we'll say here is that interest is interesting. When you're the one earning interest, think of it as loaning your money somewhere. And interest is the penalty the borrower pays you to make it worth your while to put your money to work somewhere other than in your pocket. It's a price for a privilege. And it gets calculated, so you know the amount is right. And knowledge is power. When you're the one letting your money be put to work, letting it be used, it's like interest is constantly bubbling up and being paid to you for your trouble. And the higher the interest rate, the more interest you earn. But if you're the one using someone else's money, like with a loan, you'll be the one paying the interest for the privilege. And again, the higher the interest rate charged, the more interest you'll pay. So, we've talked about the fun side of growing money, interest and earnings. But there are some not so fun sides of the value of money that can really do damage against your fun. And the sneakiest, most surprising side of this, and hardest to see, is inflation, stealing from your money's value. At least with a tax, you know it's coming, and maybe how much of a big bite it will be. But with inflation, it doesn't take one big bite. It takes a whole lot of little bites out of your buying power. And you may not see it coming, but it's happening all the time. And what happens is when these many little bites steal from the value of your money, you can't buy as much as you used to with the same amount of money. And that's the point of this story, to show how negative inflation is, even though it can be calculated the exact same way as interest or earnings. It just has a negative sign instead of a positive sign. So we want to be able to calculate interest and earnings so we can see how much our money is growing. But even more than that, we want to calculate inflation the same way, but instead of it adding to our money's value, it takes away from it. You want to be able to understand both growth and loss. Interest and earnings are positive growth and increase your savings. However, inflation is negative and it decreases the buying power of your savings. That's the knowledge we want you to take away from this more than anything else. Now, starting with the good news, let's talk about interest and how it increases value. Interest is expressed as a rate, a percentage that's added over a period of time. And whatever the interest is calculated on, that's what it's added to. For example, if the interest on $100 is 4% per year, then 4% of $100 is $4, or 4% times $100 equals $4. So after a year, $4 is added to the $100, and now you have $104. Remember, interest is first calculated using multiplication. Then that amount is added to the starting amount. Financial companies like banks, lenders, and insurance and investment companies have methods for setting their interest rates, and those rates can change for different reasons. And a small number for interest, like 4%, can add up over a long period of time to a lot of money. For example, if you have that same $100 earning 4% interest per year, and it's just left with one of these kind of financial companies to grow, in 6 years, your $100 has grown to over $125, in 10 years to almost $150. $150, and in 20 years to almost $220. And that's without you adding any more money to it or doing anything else except leaving it alone. So 4% may sound like a small number compared to $100, but you've more than doubled your money after 20 years for free. Imagine $100,000 becoming $220,000 in 20 years at 4%. Small interest on big money for a good long time. Imagine 6%, 7%, 8%, or more over many years. Now's a good time to take a break and review what we've learned. First, we started talking about how to get the money we need for the future, the three ingredients of saving, earning, and time. Then we introduced the thief named Later I Danger, whose middle name is inflation, and the danger of that does come later as time goes on. Even my name, Plenty Enough, is dangerous because we may think we have plenty enough for the future, only to be mistaken. Next, I promised to show what I learned about how interest is calculated and how inflation is calculated the same way, except it has a negative sign. But both must be considered if you're going to have the best idea about how you can live in the later years. We don't want any surprises when it's too late to fix things. And now we'll talk some more about calculating interest, and I'll try to show it slow so it's easy to know, to give you a tool to take away the mystery of how it multiplies your dollars and cents and show you how to catch errors. So let's move on. Now, did you know there are two main types of interest? They're called simple interest and compound interest. Remember that interest is calculated, and these two are basically calculated the same way, except compound interest grows faster, and for a good reason, which we'll talk about. So why would the financial companies want you to let them use your dollars and cents, and even pay you for it? Well, because they can make dollars and cents on your dollars and cents. And they need to make enough on it to pay you your promised amount, and also make some for themselves, so they can keep doing what they're doing. The financial companies don't pay you all your interest at once. They pay it to you in earnings periods, like every time a new period starts or ends. And a period is just an amount of time, such as a month or a quarter or a year. With compound interest, the amount calculated for interest is based on the growing balance of your dollars and cents. Each time the interest is paid, it adds to the old base amount and creates a new, larger base amount on which the interest will be calculated the next time or next period. We can call that base amount the principal. Interest is calculated on principal. So earlier we talked about how the calculation works, such as multiplying a principal amount like $100 by an interest rate like 4% to get $4 in interest. And that's the main part of an interest calculation, using an interest rate to compute how many dollars and cents of interest will be paid on a certain amount of principal. Let's use that example to label some things. Remember we said the base amount of dollars and cents we start with is called principal, and that principal has a value, like $100. The value of that starting amount has a name too. The value of that starting amount of principal is called its present value, like what it's worth presently. So we can use abbreviations like the letter P to stand for either principal or present value. And here's a quiz. What do you think we would call the value of that principal at a certain point in time in the future? Well, in the beginning, it's called present value. So in the future, its value will be called future value. And we can abbreviate that too with a letter like F. We now know that principal has both a present value and a future value. So we have interest, and we can call that I for short. And we know that I added to the starting amount of principal, which we called its present value, P, equals the future amount, or future value, which we called F. Now we have our first equation, and it is P plus I equals F, or present value plus interest equals future value at the end of the period, whether it be a month or a year or whatever. That's how it works. We said earlier that we'd talk about the difference between simple interest and compound interest. What we just showed, that P plus I equals F, is basically just simple interest, and it's a simple calculation, right? If the principal is $100 and the interest is 4%, then P plus I equals $100 plus $4 for the period, because 4% of $100 is $4. So we add that $4 to the $100 principal amount that we started with, and we get $104 at the end of the period. And if that happens year after year for, let's say, 10 years, and the interest period each time is 1 year, then we will simply earn $4 each year for 10 years with simple interest, or $40. And our final total after 10 years would simply be $100 plus $40 equals $140. Well, compound interest starts the same way, but it has a big and important difference. With compound interest, the value of P goes up every period, so the interest is calculated on an ever-increasing amount. Remember, I by itself is the actual interest in dollars, which we compute by taking the starting amount, P, and multiplying it by the interest rate, which is a percentage. So we start by simply adding the computed interest amount to the old principal amount to get the new principal value for the next interest calculation. Why not pause the video at this point and study this chart a little bit to see what's happening? With simple interest, interest grows on the same starting amount every period, over and over. But with compound interest, interest grows on a new starting amount each period. You see, the future value at the end of a period becomes the new starting amount or new present value for the next period, and the cycle repeats. So there's really a different way to show this from how we show it with simple interest. Instead of simply P plus I equals F, where the starting amount P remains the same every period, and therefore I is always the same amount, we could say P1 plus I equals F1, where the 1 on the P and the F means first interest earning period. But the second interest earning period, the old F1 from the end of the first period, becomes the new P for the start of the second period. So we could call it P2 if we wanted to. And it already contains the interest that was paid in the first period. Therefore, this next period, instead of just calculating interest on the original principal amount, P1, we're calculating it on the new principal amount, P2, which is higher because it includes the interest paid in the previous period. So we're even earning interest on the interest, and that helps us to accelerate the growth of the money. And when we keep doing this for the same 10-year period, instead of the simple interest amount of $40 and a final total of $140 after 10 years, we get a compound interest amount of $48.02 and a final total of $148.02 after 10 years, which in this case is 20% more compound interest than we have with simple interest. Compared to simple interest, compound interest with enough money for enough time can produce an appreciably higher return on the original principal amount. If you want to learn more about how to calculate interest and earnings growth for many periods, like multiple years, there are many calculators and resources you can find and use. But here, we only wanted to highlight the compound part of how interest can grow faster to point out that inflation does the exact same thing. But remember, it has a negative sign, so it takes away from the buying power of the dollars and cents that grew. We don't need to be experts in the calculations, but we want you to really get the concepts. And an important concept here is that inflation is always compound growth, not just simple. Let's go back to what we said earlier about having $100 more than double in 20 years at 4%. That's from a compound interest calculation. Now, think about how much things will cost in 20 years. Inflation is at the root of this. So when we're saving for the future, we have to think about what our buying power is going to be in those days. For the same number of dollars and cents, inflation causes that amount to buy less in the future compared to today. A standard inflation rate number to use in estimates like this is from 2.75% to 3% annually, and that becomes a compounded negative reality. To put this in perspective, let's make our $100 be $100,000 instead. In 20 years at 4% interest, that amount will be about $219,112. The interest earnings is great news, right? But compared to today, the future buying power of that amount in 20 years will be less by almost $92,000, using 2.75% inflation against 4% earnings compounded annually for 20 years. That brings the buying power of that $219,000 down to $127,000. And that's not the number that would be shown in the account statement. It is, effectively, compared to today, how much or how little you would be able to buy with that money in 20 years from today. The effect of rises in the cost of living on your savings is exactly why you must know to save more than you think. Don't be fooled by projections about the account balance. Be wise about the lower spending power you will have with that balance. Watch this. If the starting amount was $500,000, using the same inflation rate of 2.75%, the loss of buying power in 1 year would be $13,917, leaving only $6,083 of effective interest. Whether for 1 year or 20 years, the inflation loss is from more than 2/3 to more than 3/4 of the interest earned in that whole time, not an insignificant sum wiped away by inflation. While we've learned about how interest is calculated and how it multiplies the dollars and cents you save, we've also learned that inflation is computed the same way, but it's negative and takes away or steals from your savings. So why does this matter? Here are the easiest ways to think about it. Number one, the way people get more of the dollars and cents they plan to live on in their later years is by saving enough so that the interest earned on those dollars and cents amounts to way more than they have time to save on their own. Number two, the more time there is for money to grow and the higher the interest in earnings, the more you can save and the more secure you can make your later years. Number three, later inflation danger is very real and will visit you. And this thief will constantly rob you of your buying power. The best ways to be ready for that are to, first, understand that it will happen, and second, factor inflation in when you're thinking about the growth of your dollars and cents. Remember that inflation doesn't just jump into your financial accounts and reduce the numbers of dollars and cents. No, it's way sneakier. It works by making you think you have more than you do when you go to spend your dollars and cents. You find that you just can't buy as much as it seems you should be able to, as much as you used to. Number four, a quick and easy approximation to evaluate the loss of your buying power over a number of years is simply to take your rate of interest earnings and subtract the inflation rate from that. That can give you a close idea of the real buying power you have, and it's better to have that more realistic estimate. Number five, running out of money during a long life of later years is a really big concern for a great number of older adults. It will take some math and good moves to avoid this for yourself. Number six, money saved for later years that has not yet been taxed is subject to mandated withdrawals so that it can be taxed, and taxes can subtract substantially from your savings balance as time goes on. That is something very important to plan for. Number seven, our goal is to help equip you for making good decisions about your money so that you don't wait to take action. Thank you for watching Your Interest, Your Money, the Part 2 after Part 1, Enough Money for Enough Time. This concludes this two-part series. There's a lot of information covered, so we hope you'll go back and re-watch what you need to. Also, visit our website, www.lifefinancial.solutions to learn more, and like and subscribe to this channel for more learning opportunities. Most of all, we encourage you to be courageous, take action, and let us help when you're ready. We can do this.